and welcome to Psych Sessions, conversations about teaching and stuff. I'm Garth Neufeld, along with Eric Landrum, your podcast hosts. As the name implies, we center on conversations about teaching, but we often veer into other interesting topics, which is the in stuff. This is episode number 136, where Eric had the opportunity to interview Dr. Ngoc Bui from the University of La Verne. Ngoc is currently the permanent Associate Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences and a professor of psychology. Ngoc is also the current president of the international organization Psychi. So she's very busy. And Eric was a past president of Psychi, and they get into some fun conversations. Now, before I get you to the full interview, let me share some listening tips and some of my favorite moments. I really enjoyed this conversation because we've got two people who have been at this for quite a long time, and it's like listening to two veterans. And so for those of us who are in mid-career, they are going to discuss some of the things that are going to come up for us. For example, opportunities to take on leadership positions, opportunities to move into administration. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But the first thing that really struck me as somebody who is in mid-career is that there comes a time, if you are a person who has committed to anything peripherally, professionally, outside of your maybe institutional requirements, like being a psychi chapter advisor, that those things are hard to let go, and lets us get kind of a insider view of what it's like to have been leading that chapter at La Verne for, coming close to 2 decades, and then what it's like to think about handing that over to someone else when you've invested so much into it and it's gone so well at your institution under your leadership. So I can definitely resonate with that. Ngoc has had a passion for psychi and has been a vice president. And in psychi, in order to be president, to be nominated as president, you have to have been vice president. And there is a window of opportunity to be president, and that's 10 years post vice president. So Ngoc did something really interesting. She said no. I don't know what that's like. I'm learning. But she said no for 9 years to that opportunity to become president of Psychi. And I just want to stop here for a moment. It's such a gift to know at some point in your career what it is that you should say yes to and what it is that you should say no to. Obviously, she was very passionate about psychi, but the timing was not right for her and for her family, and who knows what other things were considered in those decisions. But thankfully, at year 10, she decided to say yes. She was nominated, she became the president, and is now actively the president of Psychi, and brings all of that experience with her. Again, I think the fascinating part here is for listeners to think about. What do you say yes to? What do you say no to? And what drives that decision making? Eric and I often joke that, when he was trying to take his family on vacations, he would do anything for that extra money in his pocket, because he had 2 young kids and, his salary just wasn't cutting it. And so he would, that's how he made decisions. And so sometimes there are those considerations, but, and I think for many of us that is a consideration, but there are also, how do you want to spend your time? What would you like to do? And so there is a privilege about being able to have that kind of internal conversation. I do think it's important for us to realize what we do say, what we should want to say yes to and no to, so that when those opportunities come, they do align with, our expertise, our passions, our personal mission, those kinds of things. And so I'm still learning about that and happy to learn from these folks. As a dean, Ngoc has moved out of the psychology department. And so even though I believe she teaches a couple classes still in the psychology department, she has moved into this associate dean position. And they really have a nice conversation about what that means and what kinds of temperaments work in that position and what kind of temperaments don't. Also, she struggles a little bit with, how permanent these kinds of positions are and whether she wants to be one of those folks who moves up because, when you're good at your job, you often get other opportunities. I don't know where Eric got this number from, but I trust him on it, that typical deans last about 5 years. And if they're good, they often get plucked for jobs, maybe in the institution, maybe other institutions as provosts or vice presidents or something like that. And so we get, again, an insider view of all of the considerations that go on when stepping out of a full-time faculty role and into a more administrative role. And so enjoy that if you are ever thinking about that. Myself, I don't think I'm thinking about it. So, but never say never. There was a interesting conversation that comes up every once in a while in psych sessions, and it has to do with the way that faculty are valued at their own institutions. And faculty can do pretty amazing things in their communities or nationally and not get recognized at all. And part of that is because we come from, a solid group of faculty in the teaching of psychology world. And, we know enough people to know that we're not great at self-promotion, telling our institutions just how well we're doing and how well we're promoting the college or the university, how well we're representing them. And so that often does not get out. Eric has some ideas about how to change that for psychi anyway. And I don't know. It reminds me that we need to not only, I think, speak openly about, our successes outside of the institution, but also champion our colleagues who have done great things and taken interest in what they are doing, because there are some great contributions that deserve to be acknowledged. I love the end of this interview as we get into Ngoc's backstory. Ngoc grew up in Vietnam, or was born in Vietnam, and left at an early age during the Vietnam War and ended up in California and stayed and remained in California with, a little breakout to Nebraska, because there are just great psychology teachers out in Nebraska. Let's face it. I run into them all the time. Okay, here they are, without any further delay, Ngoc Bui with Eric Landrum.
I am so thrilled to be here with for another session of Psych Sessions with now I think we've got time to do all of these. Interim Associate Dean, Chapter Advisor, and current International Psychi President, Ngoc Bui. I never know if I say that correctly. Ngoc,
no, that's okay? Right. Yes, that's good.
Okay, well, thank you. So, Ngoc, thank you so much for joining me for this. How are you?
As well as can be expected.
Surviving the holidays and surviving other events that I am sure are going on for everybody in your life.
Yeah, my family and I are faring much better than a lot of people. So we're blessed. We're thankful. We're no problems here. As I was saying earlier, there's COVID raging through our families. No one has major symptoms. No one's been hospitalized. Everyone's vaccinated. More than half of us boosted. So we just have some sniffles here and there in the family, and I'm waiting test results. I'm thinking I have it, but then oddly, my sister's son was tested positive yesterday or 2 days ago. She got her results back today and she's negative. And she says she has congestion and a cough. So I was like, interesting.
Yeah, it's so hard to know if it's just regular flu or COVID,
yeah.
Since the symptoms overlap. And, there's something that you said just a minute ago. It reminds me of, there's this two-edged sword sometimes of, I'm really thankful for where I am in the world and my status. But at the same time, sometimes I'm a little, I don't want to say cranky, but, it's a little frustrating. I go back personally, I go back and forth between, I've got all this stuff going on and I've got all this pressure and I've, the job and this and that. But then, you spin around, and I'm so blessed that I have the job and I have the pressure compared to other people. So
Exactly.
it's a push-pull that it sounds like you battle, and I have the same battles myself.
Yeah, I don't think we take for granted the fact that we, like you said, have jobs. We are, for the most part, not, knock on wood, healthy, and no one's hospitalized. But then again, you're right. There's a lot of pressure, and part of me says, well, you need to recognize that you're stressed out, and everybody's stressed out. But then I think, like you said, there's other people in worse positions, so I don't need to be complaining about it right now.
Yeah, but I think, and maybe the podcast isn't the place to do this, but you and I are just chatting, right? But yeah, I think we do deserve a chance to complain or vent from time to time, especially I know my wife is very good about listening to that, and she's very, very good about it. And I know that I can say things to her that I would never say to anybody else. And she's that confidant that I can have. And, so it is that double-edged sword of I I'm blessed, and and just even as I kind of introduced you, you're incredibly busy. So first off, I can't believe that you're still the chapter advisor, while at the
Yeah.
same time you're serving as the international president of Psychi, the International Honorary Society in Psychology. What's up with that?
Yeah, I struggle with that because when I first became advisor, and I don't know if advisors listening to this podcast can relate to this, I wasn't given the choice to be advisor at my school. I actually was at a department meeting, and someone brought up the fact that the current advisor of psychi, this was almost 20 years ago, when I first started working at University of La Verne. At a department meeting, they said, somebody needs to help advise that club. It's kind of barely hanging on. They turn to me, everybody turns and looks at me. I'm the new faculty member just coming in. And they said, you can do this. And I said, yeah, I was part of psychi as an undergrad. I remember it fondly. I was president of my own chapter. Sure. And so I took that on, happily, but they kind of didn't give me a choice. And over the years, I'm happy to serve as the advisor because I've gotten down a system now that works, and I get new crews of executive board, leadership in every year, sometimes twice a year, depending on things that happen. So I get new officers in, and it's great to see them, kind of take the chapter places we never thought we could go, or rebuild or build on the things that we've done. And then when I started working in the dean's office a couple of years ago, the question came up of, well, I'm not really in the psych department full time anymore. Should I give that over to someone else? I would be happy to do that. But looking around as the chair was talking to some new faculty coming in, you can see the deer in the headlights look of the new faculty when they're approached with the possibility of running this chapter, right? Advising for this chapter. And I had that same look, but I was confident that I could do something because I was part of psychi. And I didn't want to put that on them. And I've tried to invite them to kind of shadow us, come to a meeting. And it's been hard to find someone who will take it on. And I know I'm going to have to give the reins over to somebody soon. I can't be the only one running this chapter, because if I retire or leave, not that that's going to happen soon, no one will know how to continue on, like to do the things that they need to do.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go. I was just going to say it's a struggle because I want to give the reins over to someone who can take it on, but I fear that there is no one who will do it with the same passion. Not that they couldn't build that. But then again, I need to do it. I need to mentor somebody to do it.
What's the size of your department, faculty-wise?
The psych department is about 15 faculty.
Okay.
But there are dedicated faculty, meaning they only teach in the doctoral program, and there's a few that only teach in the undergrad, and then there's a couple of that teach across all programs, and there's a master's program that there's a dedicated faculty member for that. So there are kind of, I wouldn't say divisions, but there are faculty that if they were part of, let's say, the master's program, it's a little difficult for them to be advisor to a chapter that's 95% undergrad.
And is your university a union shop?
No.
Okay, so Ngoc, I'm going to say this really gently and as respectfully as possible. Doesn't it feel like and you've been there for 20 years? Is that what I heard you say?
That's right. Almost 20 years. This is 19 years. Actually, yeah, next fall will be 20 years.
So
Yeah.
when you get there 19 years ago, is it, and this is my intuition, which may not be true, isn't giving it to the brand new person who just got here kind of implicitly signaling this activity isn't important to us, so we're going to give it to the least known person who doesn't know university systems and processes? The newbie gets it.
Achieve for Psychology is Macmillan's new learning platform. Achieve sets a whole new standard for integrating assessments, activities, and analytics into your teaching. Available exclusively in Achieve are enhanced analytics to help you better understand your students and their learning. Macmillan's new insights offer customizable and actionable snapshots with high-level data on student performance and behavior, helping you focus your lectures and assignments to improve student outcomes. Tell us what you think. See a preview and get involved at macmillanlearning.com/psych sessions. Macmillan's Achieve for Psychology, engaging every student, supporting every instructor, setting the new standard for teaching and learning.
I think when the chapter started, a few years before I got there, it was a struggling chapter. I mean, they tried to do things, but they barely went to conventions. They had a couple of inductions, happening each year, but they never did anything else beyond that. And then when they hand it over to a new person, it's because the senior people feel like their energies need to be focused on other things. At the time, when I came in, we were readying for accreditation of our doctoral program. So everybody was concerned about getting that done and not really focusing their energies on getting an mostly undergraduate student organization off the ground, right? So I agree with you that that's what they tend to do. They put things on the shoulders of new faculty. We want to protect new faculty, but then again, we're hiring new faculty that need, I guess, some push or some motivation to get involved in these kinds of things.
Okay, all right. I'm going to let this go in just a minute, I promise. But I think that, the really important thing like accreditation took the senior faculty but, if psychi were a really important thing, it might have been a junior faculty, senior faculty collaboration.
Yes.
I think
co-advising, I would have supported that. No, I was it. That was me.
And Ngoc, here's the thing. I don't think, I don't know any of your colleagues. I don't think they realize how much prestige you have brought to your university by serving as not only the chapter advisor, but the regional vice president. I mean, do they even know what you're doing right now as international president of this organization, Psychi?
Well, that's another tricky conversation because
yes, I understand.
No, not because of specific, goings on in the department and me. It's because I currently serve in the dean's office, so I'm not really going to regular meetings with the department, and the department has now moved into a new college. So we now have a college of health and well-being that's being started now. And it's comprised of a variety of departments across campus. So it's not just just the psychology department, but we have kinesiology, education programs going in there, some health administration, business programs going in there, and they're formulating their own college. I'm still in the dean's office as associate dean in the College of Arts and Sciences. So it's kind of like a weird position I'm in that, although I'm part of the psychology department because I still teach for them, advise for them, and do psychi things for them, I'm not really going to be moving over to that new college with them. I don't go to their department meetings, so they really don't know what is going on with me as president of the International Honor Society right now.
Yeah.
It's not, I mention it every time we have psychi meetings and we have speakers, and we are promoting our own conference next year, as we always do. We have a convention on our own campus every year. But the department itself, I don't think I think they take the credit for having psychi be as well known as it is and strong as it is, but they don't invest what needs to be invested in making it so. Like, we've made it so. The students and I have made it so.
Yes, you have.
But the department gets the accolades, and people say, "Oh, I know the University of La Verne. That's where the president is, or that's where the model chapter was." And they'll say, yes, that is. That's, we're proud of them, but they don't notice that or give investment into it until it's brought to their attention, right? Like, it's not, they reap the benefits, but they don't really put in the work.
This is a recurring problem that I've seen all over the U.S.
Looking for more affordable quality materials for your intro psych students? Check out Hawks Learning's mastery-based courseware and texts. These materials introduce foundational psychology and research concepts that inspire students of all majors to think more critically about the world around them. Take advantage of the software features designed with student learning in mind, like customizable lessons that allow you to add videos, Google Slides, forms, and more to illustrate concepts and deepen understanding. Explore these materials, available to students for as low as $43, alongside free chapter projects and example videos at www.hawkslearning.com/psych sessions. Again, that's www.hawkslearning.com/psych sessions.
The psychi leaders are usually modest people. And they're really uncomfortable touting their own horn. They're humble. They're modest. They want to promote their students. They want to promote their university. They want to promote their department, but they don't want to promote themselves. Totally get that. Totally understand that. When I was on the board, one of the things I pitched was, it would be great to have, like, every year when there's a new president or president-elect, to have a campaign where you took out like a full-page ad in either the campus paper or the local paper, where you promoted, here's the new incoming president, and, here's what they are in charge of, here's what they run, here's something about the Psychi Central Office, to just raise awareness of the prestige level of the person, that you may not know what this person is doing, and raising the level of the prestige that you have on your campus. With all due respect, the only reason I know of the University of La Verne is because of you. There are all kinds of scholars, I'm sure, probably some amazing scholars in psychology and outside of psychology. I've never heard of them.
Yeah, it's our network that actually exposes us, me, to meeting people all around the country, all around the world. And I'm not familiar with some of the schools. I am familiar with others, and it's through psychi that I get that exposure. You're right. I didn't know of Trinity. Is it university or college that Debbie Harris O'Brien is from? She's from Trinity in Washington, D.C., but I don't know of the school, personally. I just know Washington, D.C. I know Georgetown. I know that's where my kid wants to go to college, but she's there. And I was like, oh, Trinity, tell me about it. And she was telling me this funny story about her office having a bathtub in it. And it was from the days when the place used to be, I think, a convent, or had rooms for nuns, or people living there. And her office has a room that has a bathtub. We were just laughing about that, and I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah. Wow. The perks of faculty in some places,
Yeah, I'd like to take a bath sometimes in my office. Well,
I
I don't
think
know.
I would
I'll
just
take
like
that
to
back.
hide in a bathtub sometime
Yeah,
in my office.
maybe that's a different. Maybe not take a bath, but like put some ice and some cold drinks in it. Maybe
Just a little pillow and prop up and shut the door. Absolutely.
And then my friend made beer in a bathtub one time, so maybe you could use it for that.
Bathtub gin. I mean, there could be a fundraiser in there for sure. So, one of the things, Ngoc, I wanted to talk to you about is that I think you have a story about how you got to where you are, and you wanted to tell that story. And I would love to give you a platform to be able to tell that story.
Sure. Well, I would say that I've given this a somewhat of like a speech like this, a talk to students because my chapter, they're supposed to find speakers for their induction ceremony or their convention keynote or something like that. And sometimes when they don't, and they can't, they turn to me. I'm their like backup. And I've given a speech where I've told them that you have to be open to saying yes to things, even if you're not sure, you're a little scared, you're a little nervous that you don't have the skills or the background to be able to do the thing that they're asking you to do. You kind of have to take a leap and a risk. And that's kind of why I think I got involved with the vice presidential role in psychi to begin with. It kind of opened some other doors for me, as you know now. I'm currently the president, but the connections I've made, the people I've gotten to know, it was because I think I said yes to someone asking me to serve on a steering committee. And a lot of times it's all these things at some universities, they add up to credit or some kind of promotion and tenure, check mark that you can put on your resume, but it doesn't really at my university. But I said yes anyways. Same with, I know advising for psychi is a big deal at some chapters and some universities. It's looked upon as a major piece of service for me, but all the other things related, serving on a steering committee, serving as vice president, serving as president isn't much more than being an advisor, really. So saying yes to things, I think, is a scary venture. I don't think many people are ready to say yes. I wasn't ready to say yes to being president 2 years ago when we did the elections, when they had the nominations. I'd said no for I don't know how many years in a row. You qualify to be president, to run for president of psychi after you've served as vice president, and there's a window of time that you can be nominated to run for president. If you correct me if I'm wrong, it's
10 years. Yep.
10 years. So I was coming up on my 10th year of being eligible. And for 9 years prior, I kept saying no. And the reason was the kids were little. And I know being a president, you'd have to travel quite a bit and be involved in quite a bit of events. And I just wasn't ready. Not just because they were little, although that was a major part of it. I had a lot of other things going on with getting tenure and then getting a full professor promotion. And then a few years ago, when I was asked to serve as interim associate dean, this was back in 2018, I was about to say no to that too. I had a big pro and con list. I talked to my husband about it.
Mm-hmm.
His response to me, my husband, was, well, they pay you more, right? It's a yes, right? It's a yes. And I said, yeah, I mean, you get a stipend, but you also get all the headaches. You get all of the responsibilities. You do less teaching, which I love to do. I have to do less of that. But I said yes. And that made me think about when this time came around for psychi presidential nominations. I thought to myself, well, if I said yes to this thing, and it's been a wild, working in the dean's office opens your eyes to things that maybe you don't want to know, but now that I know, mm-hmm. There's things that we need to fix. There's things that we need to right the ship in terms of getting our college where it needs to be. I said yes when the nominations came around because I didn't feel like I had any excuses. I didn't have any excuses anymore. And even though I didn't know what I was getting into, I just felt confidence that if I could figure out other things that I've done so far, I could figure this thing out too. Like it's not going to be that big of a hurdle.
Well, and the nice thing about psychi is that it's a 3-year leadership gig. It's not
forever.
It's not as permanent as and actually the title interim associate dean implies that that's not permanent either.
Well, now I'm moved from interim to now permanent.
Oh,
that will happen the beginning of the year.
Congratulations and condolences.
Thank you. And there's a whole other story why I decided to stay in that role as well, even though you're right. Interim is only 3 years for that role. And now I'm permanent.
And so would it be fair to say that now you have the leadership bug?
I was thinking about this because honestly, you're right that the presidential role is only 3 years and you serve your leadership role and then you leave, but you still lead in many other ways. I mean, in a classroom, with your chapter, in other ways. But in the dean's office, what kind of made me pause, not that I wasn't going to take on the permanent position. They said after interim, they wanted me to stay on. What gave me pause was deans. Okay, associate deans support the dean. So the associate deans don't have to make the big decisions, but whatever decisions are made, the associate deans, me and another professor, Gerard Lavatore, who's a French professor, he and I support whatever the dean's initiatives are. If she leaves for whatever reason, and deans do leave, deans don't stay very long.
They
Deans
do.
Who are good deans end up being provosts or presidents. They don't stay as deans. And I had talked about this with my husband about, well, what if in a few years, because the deans, I think, have a shelf life of like 5 years?
Yep, 5
7
to 6
years.
years. That's exactly
Something
right.
like that. In a few years, if she leaves, in the time that it takes to hire a new person, it would be one of us. It would be Gerard or myself to take over as this interim dean for a few months, right, while they do the search. And I told my husband, I'm like, holy heck, how am I supposed to do what she does? Because she is strategic. She is visionary. She thinks about things in ways that I haven't even thought about when the problem comes up. And I don't think I'm there. So to be a leader like that, I'm not ready to be that kind of leader.
Okay, so first off, Ngoc, brace yourself. So the dean search will likely take more than a couple of months, depending.
Oh, yeah.
It could be
2
5,
years.
6, 7.
Yeah.
Yes, and so an interim could serve for longer than that. And secondly, depending on how long you serve as associate dean, by the time that dean departs or retires, you might be thinking that way. And you might want to wrap your head around, not only might I be serving as interim dean, I might be applying for that dean job.
I see what the deans have to deal with. I'm not particularly fond of the tightrope walk that they have to do with managing. They have to lead up. They have to manage up and manage down, right? Like they're in the middle. So they have to figure out how to get the things that the upper administration want done, but also be the voice and advocate for the faculty and the college staff, everyone, to the upper administration. And I'm not really good with politics. That's why it's kind of funny that they put myself and my friend Gerard in our roles that we have. Because it is political, you have to kind of walk this kind of balance and not offend people, but you kind of really, you want to say what you want to say, but you can't. And I don't play that game. And I feel like the administration you have to play that game. You have to play the politics. And I'm not happy with the politics. I know there's politics everywhere.
Right.
In the department, there's politics. And it's for 19 years being in the department, I just tried to avoid a lot of it by not being involved with a lot of it, which kind of set me apart from others, but kind of I got out of the whole mess of things. good or bad. I don't know.
I suspect you could be good at it if you chose to be. And I want to ask you this. 5 years before you were interim associate dean, could you imagine yourself being interim associate dean?
No.
Okay. So 5 years before that dean position becomes open, just remember, you couldn't have imagined yourself becoming dean.
Yeah, I have a friend who he retired a few years ago. He was a social psychologist in our department. He served as associate dean for a good number of years. I think six or 7 years. He came back to the faculty in his last 3 years as faculty before he retired. Gave it all up. Didn't want to do anything else with administration. Just came back to faculty. Did some research and loved it, and then retired. And I thought to myself, I was like, that would be ideal, is to serve in administration for a few years. And then when you're done with it, you walk away. I don't see myself climbing and climbing and climbing, although people do. That's what they do.
Yeah.
They do assistant dean, associate dean, provost, president, chancellor. I mean, they just keep climbing and climbing. And I don't see myself doing that.
Of course. And I'll just say, clearly you're going to do what you want to do, but I don't think it should be because you don't think you couldn't be dean. It'll be because you choose not to do it.
I hope that's the case.
Me too.
I don't see myself having the skills that the good deans that I see doing what they're supposed to be doing have. Those skills takes years to develop.
Oh, I think you're in the midst of acquiring them right now, if you don't already have them.
I don't think I have that. I'll give you an example. In one meeting, we were talking about a faculty member, some issues going on, as they always are.
Sure.
People not getting along, some program not doing what they're supposed to do, bringing in students, whatever it is. I brought up some questions like, oh, what about talking to this person or that person? And the dean said, well, that's fine. We should do that. But let's think about how it connects with these other programs, or how we can bring in some outside groups to look at this. And I was blown away. I was like, what? She's already thinking, like, I'm thinking this low, mid-level kind of solution. She's thinking this broad, higher level kind of really far-reaching solution. And I'm like, I don't ever, I'm learning from that, but that would take years for me to develop. I can barely get my internet to work, as I was just telling you today.
Okay, that's a different thing. All you got to do is hear 3 or 4 more of those big, broad solutions, and you'll be picking up on that.
Hopefully.
Yeah, you will. Oh, come on. You will. If they didn't think you had the potential to do that, you wouldn't be an associate dean. You wouldn't have been named a permanent associate dean.
That's true. I think there are things about us. Gerard and I were named permanent in our position. He was an interim as well. That, funnily, part of it is what you're saying. You can do the things that you need to do, and they see that in you. They're like, you have what it takes to do this job. But part of it also is personality, which I don't really like this, but it is the fact that there are other people around campus that can do this job. I've seen it.
Sure.
They have the skills. They're organized. They think about problems in the ways that I think would jive with this dean, like would match with what she's doing. They just don't get along with her. Like in terms of personality, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
in terms
I do.
of some people just rub you the wrong way.
Yeah.
Some people, just the way that they interact or talk is just too serious or too, out of not in line with what everybody else is thinking, but they could do the job. And so part of why I think we're in the position we're in is we get along with other people. And sorry to say that the people who don't have that same type of personality just won't get picked. Won't get promoted, won't get moved up, or I was asked to be interim dean. There wasn't a search that somebody came out and said, we need you to serve. We think that you have the temperament, the ability to get to be part of this office.
And there it is. There it is.
But that bothers me in terms of temperament. There are some people who their temperament is what it is because of the environment they grew up in. Not to say that they don't have the skills. And they just don't get along with people in the ways that people expect them to.
Yeah, but if
they're
you have
not selected.
If you have an associate dean who knows all the policies and all the procedures, but pisses off every disgruntled student and parent and legislator and faculty member who walks in that office, but they know all the technical aspects of the job, they are not serving the dean.
That's true. But what do we do with those people?
We don't put them in administrative positions. We let them be great teachers, great researchers, provide service to the community where it matters, but they don't have to be. There's no job guarantee that says thou shalt become an administrator over the course of your career if you're a tenured faculty member.
But then this gets to another problem that I've seen, which is faculty who are doing what they're supposed to be doing, do get along with a lot of people, know how to navigate a lot of that politics. They are far and few. They are not, and there are not as enough of them.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
So it's just a handful of us that do most of that work, which idealistically, I wish there was like a training that could get everyone to this level of, interaction to, getting to the, training them to be an administrator in their own right in different ways to work with a variety of people. There is no training like that.
Of those who want to become it. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there are little training programs around the country. I mean, there are chair trainings, that you can go to. There are 3-day chair workshops. There are even some specialized ones for psychology chairs, the Association of Heads of Departments of Psychology, stuff like that. But you're talking about a skill set, which I think what you're talking about, very few people have, is that interpersonal awareness to be able to navigate a very tense situation, and how do you diffuse that in a way that's respectful, that honors people's feelings and thoughts and emotions, but also navigates, here's the dean's stance. I know what's going to happen at the end of the day. I've got to get you there as close as possible without pissing you off.
Yes.
Yeah, I think very few people can do that. I think.
Yeah, it's making me wonder about what my longevity is in education overall.
That's a really interesting topic that I've been thinking about a lot lately for myself. That we should have a conversation when we're not recording at some point, because I too wonder. I mean, I'm at year 33 for myself, so I may not be around much longer, but I'm not sure I really want to be doing this a whole lot longer. Higher ed as an industry.
Well, are you close to retiring, or are you close to just being done with education?
Yes and yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll be 59 in January, so I've got a few more years till I get to retirement age. So, yeah.
Okay.
So Ngoc, let me take you. Oh, go ahead. You were going to say something.
Oh, the last thing I wanted to say about the politics of it all is, I think it's funny that you say it takes a certain type of person to be a leader and be able to manage all of that, and not making people mad and being able to do the work, getting along with the people. And I was at the summer psychi board meeting, and somebody, I don't remember who it was saying, "Oh, you're a social psychologist. Oh, that's you seem so normal." And I was thinking, what does that mean? And I think she was explaining that the people she knew that were in social psychology were kind of oddballs, like strange. And I was laughing because I was thinking I am an oddball, but I don't think she sees that, because I wrote in an article for Eye on Psychi the fact that I study social groups. I mean, I study individuals in social situations, but I don't like to be in groups, and I am very introverted. Like I don't enjoy being around other
Yeah,
people.
me too.
As much as I enjoy being by myself.
I'm highly introverted. I mean, and I don't say that about social psychologists as being oddballs, and I don't call this group oddballs, but I think of sociologists as a group as being. I mean, honestly, for me, I've met very few sociologists in my career who were happy individuals.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I think sociologists really understand the discomfort and the anxiety and, what's wrong with the world, and they study it for a living. So I think that makes them very angry interpersonally. So most sociologists I've interacted with a couple of exceptions, have just always been kind of angry, bitter individuals because they really understand how the world's messed up. So I wouldn't have called it on social psychologist. I would have that sweeping inaccurate generalization about sociologists if I was going to do that. I might end up going back and editing myself out of that part out because it's not very nice.
But I don't know about your own department, but you would think people who study psychology would be a little bit more, I don't know, balanced or a little bit more aware, as you were saying before, interpersonal awareness. And there's some very extreme figures in some of the departments I've seen, my own department, that just, you wonder, did you study psychology? You understand that this is strange, right? The behaviors you're exhibiting, this is odd.
Oh, you would think that, but I think sometimes some people study psychology just so they can get to being messed up as quickly as possible. 0 to 60, and just how can we mess people up just as quickly as possible? So, Ngoc, I want to switch gears a little bit, and if you're comfortable with this, can you tell me about your background, like where you grew up, if you had brothers and sisters, that kind of stuff, if you don't mind?
Sure. I am one of 3 kids. I have an older brother. He's 5 years older than me. I have a younger sister. She's 1 year younger than me.
Okay.
My family, my parents and my siblings and I left Vietnam at the fall of Saigon, the city, when the communists started coming down from the north and taking over all the cities. And that was when the U.S. started pulling out troops in 1975.
Okay.
We left in April 1975 when the city fell. We were in a couple of different camps before we came to California. And what was funny what I remember about that was my aunts and uncles and my dad were given the choice to pick certain places in California or in the United States to go. And a couple of my aunts wanted to go to New York. One wanted to go to Pennsylvania. And then my dad was told by somebody, oh, don't go there. It's cold. Don't go to we're from Vietnam. We want warm places. We don't want to go to cold places. And so my dad's like, California, that sounds like a good place. It sounds warm. So we went to California. We were sponsored by a church, Catholic church, because my mom's Catholic, my dad's Buddhist. And so we went to California. And then lo and behold, my aunt and uncle who did go to New York and the East Coast, they would they would write us and tell stories about how cold it was. And they had to shovel themselves out of snow and it was terrible. And they eventually moved to California.
So your mom and dad didn't know that California would be generally warm. They just thought it sounded like it would be warm.
Well, they were told,
oh, okay.
but they didn't know anything about the other states either. People were saying things, oh, that's cold, that's warm. And they were just like, California sounds good. And people were saying it's better. And, so they were sponsored by a church out in to come to California.
Okay.
So we grew up in San Gabriel Valley. I lived in Rosemead, went to Rosemead High School. Then I went to Cal Poly Pomona. And I tell the story to my daughter because she's looking for colleges now. Like she has applied and is now just waiting for colleges to let her know in spring. But when I applied to college, it wasn't a choice to go out of state or go far. There were just a couple of choices. One of them actually being University of La Verne. I applied there, got in. Loyola Marymount, I got in. UCLA, I got in. Cal Poly, I got in. And I think I got into Irvine. But my dad said Cal Poly was the cheapest, so I went there. And once I had finished undergrad, which I tried to do as fast as possible, I got out of undergrad in 3 years, and the first thing I thought of was to go to graduate school. And the place that gave me a full ride was Nebraska. And the only thing my dad knew about Nebraska was they had a football team.
Right.
He said, "Oh, Nebraska, they have a football." And I said, "Yeah, they do." And so I went there for graduate school and was planning to stay after I graduated because my husband had, at the time, my boyfriend, moved out there to be with me. And I finished my doctoral program and I got a job teaching at a community college in Omaha full time with benefits, union, everything.
Okay, so let me slip in here. But you packed so much good stuff in there. So growing up, was it always you are going to college? It was never a question of going or not. It's like, because you applied to so many schools and got in, I'm assuming mom and dad said, Ngoc, you're going to college.
Oh, yeah. My brother had gone to UC Riverside.
Okay.
So it wasn't a question of whether my sister and I were going to go to college. We were going to go.
Okay.
At the time, I was okay with going to Cal Poly because my dad said, you're not going to stay on campus. It's too expensive and you're a girl.
Okay.
Which, whatever.
All right.
But I don't think they thought of anything else but that path. Now, people realize you could take a gap year. You could work for a little bit and then go back. But back then it was you finish high school, you go to college.
And had your mom and dad gone to college?
My dad went to Riverside Community College and got his AA degree there.
Awesome.
When he came over, my mom only finished high school. She didn't go to college.
Okay.
Yeah. So my dad knew the value of getting a degree because it helped him in his work. He worked at Northrop Grumman, building jet fighters. And he said that with his degree, he was able to get higher pay than people without a degree.
Right.
So,
and plus that's, I'm not going to try to imagine like I can understand it, but that just has to be an amazing transition to leave your home country and go to another country and in some ways start over. Plus start over the way that your family did. I mean, you're in a camp. That has to be an incredibly tough, hard transition. So,
yeah, I was thinking about that. Like, it is a huge, event or just drastic choice to make. Yeah. To say, we're going to take our entire family and move to another part of the world where we hardly know the language.
Right.
And we're just going to start over there.
And you don't know the systems and the processes, and you don't know about, I'm assuming you didn't know about healthcare or your future employment. I mean, what an amazing risk and gamble and betting on opportunities for your family. I mean, to me, it's nearly unimaginable. So.
Yeah, I don't know if, and if anybody today, that didn't grow up in those times could see the sacrifices that they made.
Right.
I know the immigrants now that are running from war are feeling the same thing or experiencing the same thing.
Right.
But it seems so far removed for kids. Like my kids don't appreciate that. They just see grandpa. And I was saying like, grandpa took our whole family and moved to another part of the world. Yeah. Leaving most of everything behind to start over.
Leaving
that's a big deal.
Lives and businesses and acquaintances and lifelong friends, I'm sure, and just left everything so that his immediate family could have a better life. It's really impressive to think about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Cal Poly, and then
University of Nebraska.
Mm-hmm. And so, master's and PhD there.
Yes, social psychology. And I was saying I was going to stay there. My husband and I eventually got married, and I was working a couple years into the community college system, being their full-time they call it a social science instructor, not a psychology professor, but social sciences, because I covered things in human relations and some sociology stuff. But we moved back to California because my mom was diagnosed with cancer right around 2002. And luckily, the University of La Verne, weirdly, the place that I applied to years earlier, didn't go, had a job opening. And on one of my visits when she was in the hospital after she had a major surgery. I did my interview when I was over here in California, and I got it. And we moved. And she lived for a few more years, so we were glad to at least be able to be here with her.
Yeah.
And La Verne worked out in that it wasn't too far from where we eventually ended up buying a house. We stayed with my in-laws for a while before we bought that house. We had my first child, my daughter, in the meantime. And so 17 years later, we're still here. She's going to start college next year. I mean, it came full circle. I mean, I started here, I went away, and I came back here. So I think it was kind of meant to be to be in the same area.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. I don't think I knew all of that. I think I've heard you talk a couple times about pieces of that. But I thank you for sharing that. I don't know how much more time we have left, but I think you're this year's Psychi president, and you have a presidential theme. I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that as well.
Well, it's hard to pick a theme because you don't want to do the same things everyone does. And Debbie, the president before me, did a really great theme about using psychology to answer questions that people have. Psychology has the answers. And she also wove into her theme last year because of some of the racial tensions and the protests that were happening. She used some of the, it wasn't really the theme directly, but she did weave in some of the racial justice parts of her initiatives into her year as president. And I knew that was something we were already doing, so I didn't want to keep that go, as my theme, although that's, an ongoing kind of mission of psychi.
Absolutely.
So because of COVID and the year and a half, now almost 2 years that we've been home, I kept thinking that my students were having a hard time getting the kind of experience and mentorship that they could have gotten if they were face to face. So my theme this year was to connect back with psychi, more specifically, bringing back these kinds of mentorship and internship connections that we can provide our students, our alumni, and then kind of use the knowledge of faculty and existing alumni to help bolster those connections. So that's what I've been working on. It's starting slow, but we're going to roll out a survey about people's needs for mentorship and then start setting up a mentorship kind of directory so people can connect with one another. And the same with an internship focus as well.
Yeah, I remember when I was still connected to the board, they started to play with that through an app. And I don't think the app is still going anymore, but there was talk of, psychi alums, in theory, could sign up to mentor folks who were undergraduates. And there was going to be some sort of connective tissue that psychi was going to provide the infrastructure. And then I think COVID hit, and then, that kind of threw off everybody off their tracks. So,
yeah. I don't know how far I can get during the presidential year to get things off the ground, because I know things take a while. You put initiatives out there and you do what you can to get it started. But as president, during the year that you're doing it, you may not see it come to fruition until the following year, once you get everything started, and then it goes. But I don't think it's far from the continuing, I guess, efforts that the group wants to do, with just connect students with resources. I mean, we've always wanted to do that. I just wanted to put more focus on it just because I haven't seen my students physically for over a year and a half until just this last semester. And it's hard to give them that kind of career readiness, connections and advice. One more thing before I know you have a question for me.
No, I'm good.
Because it looks like you were going to.
I have 84 things to talk to you about. I just don't have all that time. Yeah, nor do you. I don't think. Yeah.
Well, what made me think about being a mentor to students was we started having an initiative at our university a couple of years ago to make students more career ready. So we wanted to infuse things in the classroom and extracurricular that helps them find jobs, find internships, and so forth. So I started doing something in my own class this last semester, which is we meet twice a week because we were face to face this last fall. On the second meeting of the week, I, at the end of the lecture, give them a career tip of the day, right? So it spanned from everything like graduate school, interviewing, getting a job, what to do when you're on the job, applications, internship, should I take a gap year or not? Those kinds of questions. I did that for about 12 weeks because I didn't do it right away when we first had the first couple of sessions of classes. And then the last 12 weeks of classes of a 16-week semester, I had a tip every week. And then at the end of the semester, right, the students, we just had our last meeting and I said, good luck on finals, won't see you. They said, of all the things that, for this class, the tips were the things that were most helpful. And I was like, looking at like, really? Like I taught you experimental psych and the only thing you remembered was the career tips, not experimental psych, but they laughed and they said, no other class really goes over these kinds of things that help us get a job, maintain a job, do these kinds of things that help us get ready because they're seniors. That's the class I teach. It's all seniors. So I'm thinking of that as I try to bring that back to Psychi's theme of being able to help students connect with the people that would give them the best advice or support for when they go out there. I mean, they're for graduate school or jobs, that's what they need.
Our students are starved for that, Ngoc. I teach a capstone class. I just finished it a couple of weeks ago. 81 students in it, and I don't do it the same format as you do, but I devote entire 75-minute lectures to that, and they just soak that up. As they want to know about going into the psychology workforce as much as or more than even going to grad school, because most of the students going to grad school already know the routine for that. And they are starved for that. And, our career services folks do a great job at the generic, CV prep, cover letter prep. And we have a specialist over there for psych majors who does a really nice job, but still they'd like hearing it from a psychology professor. And
they probably asked you questions about how you got to be where you were. How did you decide which program? Those kinds of things. That's the things they want to hear. And that's kind of what I provide, as opposed to, well, you're right. There's generic information. There's Career Center, obviously, but they like to hear it from us.
Yeah. And I think, those tip of the day types of things, I've tried to, in my own classes, give them evidence-based advice. So I'll go into the literature and give them the most recent stuff I can find on resumes, and then give them examples of a current one and then one that follows the most recent advice. Or there's even a CV literature. There are a handful of people who do research on improving your curriculum vitae and that kind of stuff. And so people are starved for that. The other thing that I was thinking about while you were speaking is that we have to get better, not only in psychi, but just as educators, in providing opportunities for people who are online, hybrid, and face-to-face. I know our own chapter at Boise State has struggled with online chapter activities during COVID, and inviting someone to give a talk and having them giving a talk in a classroom on campus, but also broadcasting it over Zoom and also recording it. We've got to get better at finding ways to serve all of our chapter members, whether they can be in a room with us or not. And that's a challenge compared to 5 years ago when we weren't as worried about COVID and gathering in groups.
Yes, I agree with that. We've struggled with that too. I just have to bring my laptop pointed at the speaker sometimes. I ended up just bringing my own camera into the classroom and broadcasting it. It is a struggle because you have to keep letting people into the room, or they have to mute themselves. You have to mute them. It becomes this issue. Management
chapters almost need like a technology officer these days. And and I was going to say about your presidential theme, Connect with Psychi, that I would suggest it doesn't have to be done by the time your past president year is finished. I still am very interested, and my own presidential theme helped me. And I as soon as I'm done with chair, I hope to be able to circle back to that. That hashtag never has to go away. I still am very passionate about that topic, just as department chair. I don't have any bandwidth for it. And so I hope that, I don't need any funding from psychi to pursue that on my own. I can still write things and organize chapter activities that still can connect to that. So hopefully you won't put that pressure on yourself to say, oh, I've got to have it done in the next year or year and a half. So
good to know. Good to know.
Hopefully it'll live on. What else did you want to? I don't want to keep you too much past an hour. What else were you thinking? Oh my gosh! When I talk to Eric, I got to be sure that I mention X. What solve for X?
I think we covered a lot of things. I wanted to know if your podcast is something where you revisit topics with people, you want them to come back and update.
Oh, you'd be more than welcome to come back. Absolutely. I'd be happy to have you back.
I mean, I appreciate you inviting me on this podcast. I just don't know how these things kind of work. I don't listen to any podcast myself.
That's okay. Yes, we have return guests on the podcast. Absolutely. We'd be happy to have you, like maybe at the conclusion of your presidential year, or maybe like a year from now, like next December, next January, if you want to report on how things are going or how things went after the fact.
Sure.
Or like when you maybe during your dean's office inaugural, like after you give that address, when you become dean of your college there at the University of La Verne, that'd be kind of fun.
Put that out. If you put that out in the universe, I'm telling you things. I told this to a bunch of students the other at an induction ceremony. If they want things to happen, they need to say it out loud. Not that it's like, making a wish and somebody grants you your wish kind of thing. It's more like you say it, it's out there. Now someone might hear it, and make it happen, or you now have to follow through because you said it. It's like, cognitive consistency. You have to do what you said you're going to do. So if you're saying that this is going to happen, I don't want you to put that out there because then it's going to happen. And I don't know if I can handle that.
Well, Provost Bui, if you have to make certain decisions, I trust you to make the right decisions, Vice President Bui.
Too much power in the hands of the people who aren't ready to wield that. Some days, if I was president, some days I just want to fire a bunch of people. I don't think that's good. That's not good. I don't have that.
Here, I'm going to pretend to turn the microphones off. Click. Don't you think some days maybe a few people ought to be fired?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I definitely think that if I had that power, people would be gone. But maybe that's not a good decision to make. Well, and I need more experience. I need more control. It's with great power. With great power comes great responsibility.
Thank you, Spider-Man. I appreciate the Spider-Man. Is that Marvel or DC? I get those confused.
It's Sony now, right?
Is it Sony? Okay. But the thing is, I just know you well enough to know that you would follow due process, that you wouldn't just willy-nilly fire somebody. You wouldn't, get out the dartboard or draw names.
No.
You have people in mind because you've seen their performance and their outcomes. This isn't a random draw for you.
Yeah. Yeah. But I appreciate the confidence you seem to have in me and doing what I need to do, but we'll see how long this lasts. I hope to stay as long as I can support this new dean. What I was going to say was this new dean just started this last January 2021. So she'll be coming up on our 1-year anniversary. And when they announced that we could continue on in a permanent position, both my colleague and I said, we want to be here to support her. Imagine you coming in, you had a team, and then 9-10 months later, they're like, see ya, bye, find some new team. And you're like, oh, okay.
Well,
so we wanted to support her and stay, and we'll see how long that will last.
Well, I will tell you that if she were to leave, the people around you in your college are going to want those associate deans to stay as long as they can stay, because you want people in that office who know the routine while the new person gets the lay of the land.
Exactly. Stability is what they want.
Absolutely. We're at a place right now where we have a relatively new president and a brand new provost, and we have 5 dean searches going on right now.
Oh, wow.
5. Yeah, we got a Groupon, and so it's really handy. 5 dean searches and a couple of VPs or AVPs. So that instability or unfamiliarity at the top is a little bit unnerving, I got to tell you. Yeah. So it's nice to have people up there that you know and you trust. It's a good feeling when you've got that up at the top.
Good. Well, it was great talking to you today.
Thank you, Ngoc, for going to the technology store, for talking to customer support, for overnighting new modem and cables and everything that you did to make this happen. I really appreciate it, and I know our listeners will too. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.